All right, everyone, get ready to dive deep into the world of Pi Network. Pi Network is this cryptocurrency project, and they're all about creating like the most inclusive peer-to-peer ecosystem out there. And guess what? They are about to launch their open network.
Yeah, it's a big moment for them. They're really focused on making cryptocurrency, something everyone can get involved in. Like they already have over 55 million users around the world.
55 million. Wow, that's huge. I mean, that's a lot of people. I've heard the term pioneers before. Is that what they call them?
Yeah, pioneers. It's their community. And get this, 19 million of them are already verified.
19 million verified. That's serious. It sounds like they're building a real community. So what does this open network thing actually mean? What's changing?
Well, open network means Pi is going to be connected to other networks. All those other cryptocurrency systems out there, it's like they're finally stepping onto the global stage after years of developing in their enclosed network.
Ah, okay. So, like, up until now, Pi has been doing its own thing, and now it's ready to connect with the rest of the crypto world. Got it. But what does that actually mean for, like, the average person who's maybe never even heard of Pi before?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Open network means pioneers will be able to use Pi for actual transactions outside of the Pi ecosystem.
So not just within their own little Pi world.
Right. So instead of it just being this, token inside a closed system, it'll have real world utility.
Wait, so, like, I could buy stuff with Pi?
Exactly. Like, picture using Pi to buy your groceries, paying for services, or even sending it to friends who use other crypto wallets. It's going to open up tons of possibilities. Pi could become a real form of payment that we use every day.
Okay, now I see why everyone's so excited about this. But hold on, how did Pi get to this point? It sounds like it's been a long road to get to this open network launch.
Oh, it definitely has. I mean, Pi Network has been around for over 6 years. They've been taking a very slow and steady approach, moving through different phases.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, what was the deal with their enclosed network? I remember hearing about that. When did that start?
Yeah, so that kicked off back in December 2021. It was all about building a solid base for Pi, giving pioneers time to get verified and developers time to build apps. And of course, the Pi core team, they needed time to really fine-tune everything on the platform.
Ah, so they were kind of like building a city behind closed doors, making sure everything was perfect before letting everyone in.
That's a great way to put it. And, during that enclosed network phase, they introduced a new mining rewards formula. It was a pretty big shift, designed for sustainability and making sure Pi stays scarce.
So even though Pi wants to be accessible, they're still thinking about its value in the long run.
Right. They know that for any cryptocurrency to succeed, it needs to be both easy for people to use, but also valuable over time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if this open network launched, did everyone just automatically get switched over?
Not quite. Actually, back in July of 2024, they had something called the grace period. It was all about getting people to complete their KYC and get ready to move over to the mainnet.
KYC and Mainnet. Sorry, for someone who's new to this, what do those even mean?
No worries. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. It's how they verify your identity. It's pretty standard in finance, helps prevent fraud and all that. And the mainnet. That's the main blockchain where all the real transactions happen. Not the test net they use for, testing and stuff.
Right, right. So during that grace period, they were basically giving everyone a heads up to get their KYC done and get prepped for the open network.
Exactly. They wanted everyone on board and ready for the big transition. And all that groundwork actually allowed them to hit some key conditions they needed for the open network launch.
Okay, now this is getting interesting. So there were conditions they had to meet to make this launch happen, like what milestones?
Yes. And get this, they didn't just meet them, they actually exceeded them in some areas.
No way. They're overachievers.
Okay, tell me, what were these conditions? Okay, so first off, all the technical stuff, the product, the business side, the legal, all of that had to be finished and signed off on, of course. They had to be absolutely sure everything was ready for a smooth launch.
Sounds like a ton of work, I bet. What else?
Big one, community engagement. They needed a bunch of pioneers to be KYC verified and moved over to the mainnet. It had to show real commitment from the community that people were ready to jump into this open network.
So it wasn't just about the tech being ready, it was also about the people, the pioneers being ready.
Yes. They wanted to make sure this open network wasn't just launching into, thin air. They needed a strong community ready to use it. And that brings us to the third condition, a thriving ecosystem.
Okay, so they needed actual apps and stuff.
Exactly. Pi had to be more than just a cryptocurrency in name only. It had to have a purpose, to be useful. So they needed a bunch of different apps ready to launch to show that Pi is a platform with real-world applications.
Makes sense. So how did they do? Did they hit all the targets?
They blew past them. Over 19 million pioneers with verified IDs. Their initial target was only 15 million.
Wow. And what about that mainnet migration?
Over 10.14 million have already moved to the mainnet. They were aiming for 10 million.
That's amazing. It seems like the Pi community was really dedicated to making this happen.
They absolutely were, and there's one more thing. They have over 100 apps that are either already on the mainnet or totally ready for it.
100 apps. Wow. So Pi Network has millions of active users. The tech side is all set, and there are tons of apps ready to go. They're ready to take over, aren't they?
They are, and it's just the beginning. Now that the open network is live, things are going to get even more interesting.
All right, well, you've definitely got me hooked. I'm dying to know what happens next for all these pioneers and the developers building on Pi. What's in store for them?
So what's next for all these pioneers and developers? Now that the open network is live, things are going to get really interesting for them.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. Like before the break, you were talking about how Pi Network just blew past those open network conditions, and it's really impressive what they're doing. It feels like they're really on to something special here.
I think so too. And it's not just about the tech, it's about the whole community and how committed they are to bringing Pi into the real world.
That's what keeps coming up, that real-world utility thing. It's what sets Pi apart, don't you think? So many other crypto projects are just about trading and speculating, but Pi seems to be focused on building a system that people can actually use in their everyday lives.
Yes. And that's what makes the open network so exciting for pioneers. Remember how we were talking about buying groceries with Pi? That's actually becoming a real possibility now.
Hold on, really? So pioneers can start using Pi outside of the Pi network, like in the real world. How would that even work?
Well, think about it. Open network means they're connected to everything else. Pioneers can use Pi to buy stuff from businesses that accept it. They can send Pi to friends who are using different crypto wallets. And they might even be able to exchange Pi for other cryptocurrencies or regular money on exchanges that are, compliant with all the rules.
So Pi is becoming more like a real currency that people can use every day. But wouldn't they need a lot of places that accept Pi for that to actually work?
Right. But remember, we're just getting started. As more pioneers use Pi for transactions and businesses see how much potential it has, more and more places will start accepting it.
Like a snowball effect, right?
Yeah.
The more people use it, the more valuable it becomes, and that attracts even more users and businesses.
Exactly. And Pi Network is actively trying to make this happen. They're working on getting local businesses to accept Pi. They're encouraging store owners to give it a shot. They even have resources to teach pioneers how to use Pi in their own communities.
So Pi Network is definitely doing its part. But what can pioneers do to help make this happen faster? Like to help get more people using Pi?
There's actually a lot they can do. For starters, they should keep mining and using Pi apps. The more active the community is, the stronger the whole ecosystem gets. And of course, they can spread the word about Pi, encourage their friends and family to join, and support businesses that are already accepting Pi.
So they need to create a movement,
Yeah.
Build excitement and support for Pi.
Yes. And every little bit counts. Pi is all about decentralization, right? So its power really comes from all of its users. The more pioneers get involved, the more successful Pi Network will be.
Makes sense. Now, going back to that whole transition from testnet to mainnet, you mentioned that not every pioneer could move their node right away. So what's the process for that?
Well, it's happening in phases. The core team is inviting pioneers to transition their nodes based on how much they've contributed to the network and their reliability scores. It's a way to make sure the mainnet is managed by people who are dedicated and trustworthy.
So they're choosing the pioneers who have the most experience and have been the most reliable to lead the way.
Yeah, pretty much. They're looking for the people who have really shown commitment to the network. And to be super transparent, Pi Network will be making all the node rank data public as soon as they can. So pioneers will be able to see how they're being evaluated and what they can do to improve their chances of running a mainnet node.
That's awesome. Transparency is so important, especially with crypto. Good to see Pi Network prioritizing that. Okay, now let's dive deeper into KYC verification. We talked about it a little before the break. But why is it so crucial now that Pi is going open network?
KYC is all about verifying who people are. It prevents fraud and illegal activities. It's a standard practice across the board in finance. And for Pi Network to be safe and compliant, they need to make sure they know who their users are.
So it's not just about protecting Pi, it's about making sure Pi can actually interact with the rest of the financial world in a responsible way, right?
Exactly. KYC helps to build trust and show that Pi is legitimate. And that's super important for any cryptocurrency that wants to be taken seriously and be adopted by the mainstream.
So it's not just for individual users, right? Businesses that want to get involved also need to be verified.
Yeah, for businesses, it's KYB verification, know your business. It makes sure that they're legit and operating within the rules.
It's all about keeping things fair and making sure everyone's held to the same standards.
Exactly. Creating a trustworthy ecosystem for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about what pioneers can do in the open network, how those node transitions work, and the importance of KYC and KYB. But what about the developers? What's their role in all of this? And what advice would you give to developers who are building apps for the Pi ecosystem?
Oh, the developers are the builders, the creators. They're the ones bringing Pi into the mainstream with all the apps and tools they're building. They have a big responsibility to make sure these apps are useful, engaging, and truly valuable for the community.
So it's not enough to just build any old app, right? It has to be something that people actually want to use.
Absolutely. Developers need to think about what pioneers really need. What will make their lives easier or more enjoyable? A decentralized marketplace, a new social media platform, a different kind of payment system, even a game. The key is to build something that people will find valuable and use regularly.
So it's all about utility and user experience.
Right. And of course, security and reliability are super important, and the app has to be easy to use. It's a really exciting time to be a developer in the Pi Network ecosystem. They have a chance to be at the forefront of a huge change in the crypto world.
Definitely sounds like it. So we've covered a lot of ground today, the open network, what it means for pioneers and developers, the security measures, and the importance of compliance. Anything else you think is super important to highlight? Any key takeaways you'd want our listeners to remember?
The big thing to remember is that Pi Network is more than just another crypto. It's a movement. It's community-driven. They want to build a financial system that's inclusive and accessible. And this open network launch, it's a huge step towards making that happen.
It's amazing to see a crypto project that has such a strong social mission. It's something that's really worth paying attention to.
For sure.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Pi Network's open network launch, is there a question we can leave our listeners with, something to really make them think? Like, what challenges and opportunities do you see for Pi Network moving forward?
Good question. I think a big opportunity and also a challenge will be figuring out how to manage all this growth. They already have over 55 million users, which is incredible. So how do they maintain a strong community and a smooth user experience as that number keeps growing? That's going to be a big one.
Makes sense. How do you scale up something like this, something that's so community-driven, without losing that feeling of connection? It's a tough balance to strike. What else? Anything else you think might be a challenge?
Well, the crypto world is always changing. New technologies pop up all the time, and there's always new competition. So Pi Network can't just sit still, They have to keep innovating and adapting to stay ahead of the curve.
They have to be on their toes, ready to respond to the market and the community as things change.
Yes. And at the same time, they can't lose sight of what's important to them: accessibility, usability, and making sure Pi has real-world utility. If they can stick to their values while keeping up with all these changes, they have a real shot at making a lasting impact.
It's going to be fascinating to see how Pi Network tackles all these challenges and makes the most of the opportunities that come their way. They've already achieved so much, and now that the open network is here, the possibilities seem endless.
I totally agree. This is just the beginning of a new chapter for Pi Network, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
On that note, let's wrap up this part of the deep dive. We'll be right back after a quick break to finish up this episode. And we are back. One thing that really strikes me about Pi Network,
what's it?
It's the community they've built. It's amazing how passionate and involved these pioneers are.
I know, right? It's awesome to see how much they care about the project.
And it's not just about, making money. It feels like they're part of something bigger, something that could really change the way we think about money.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's what makes Pi different. It's about giving people a voice, giving them control.
Empowering people,
Yeah.
especially in a world where so many people feel left out by the traditional financial system.
Exactly. Pi Network is breaking down those barriers, making sure everyone can get involved with crypto no matter what their background is or how much money they have.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Pi Network's open network launch, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to remember?
Hmm. I think the biggest takeaway is that Pi Network shows what can happen when people come together with a shared vision. They've proven that amazing things can happen when people work towards a common goal.
I love that. And it reminds us that the future of crypto isn't just about the technology, it's about the people.
Yeah, it's about building something better, something fairer that works for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there, check out Pi Network, see where this journey takes them. Who knows, maybe you'll become a pioneer yourself and join the movement.
And don't forget, this open network launch is just the start. The best is yet to come.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today, but the conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring the world of Pi Network. See what it holds for you. Until next time, keep diving deep.